you to kind of remember how all those feelings that you felt when we first had to go into school, to this school closure. In my district, we found out on a Friday. Well, the possibility was a Friday, and Monday we weren't back. So it was just a kind of madness at first. And so I want you guys to watch this video of my favorite person with autism, Sheldon from the Big Bang Theory, and see what connections you guys can make with like Sheldon and how he's reacting to his new environment compared to how you reacted with the school closure, okay?
What are you doing? I'm trying to raise the temperature in here before my nipples tear through my shirt. You just turn up the thermostat. Aha, good question. It turns out that the thermostat for my new office isn't in my new office. No, it's next door in Professor Davenport's office, who is currently enjoying the hot flashes associated with menopause.
Why is there a hole here?
Why is there a hole in my new office? I've narrowed it down to two possibilities. There was something in the wall that someone outside the wall wanted, or the more disturbing, there was something in the wall that wanted out.
At least you finally got a window that opens. That's nice.
Is it? Listen.
What, you don't like wind chimes?
No, I hate them, but it gets worse. There it is. It's completely out of tune with the wind chimes.
So?
You don't get it, do you? That's a mockingbird. Mockingbirds can change their song, which means he's out of tune on purpose. He's mocking me.
All right, so what we're gonna go ahead and do is, I want you guys to get to know each other. So we're gonna create some breakout rooms right now. And I want you guys to introduce yourselves. Beth is gonna put some questions that we want you guys to go over. Introduce yourselves to each other. Tell you guys, tell the role that you're in. You know, are you an admin? Are you gen ed? Are you special ed? Like, what are you guys doing? And then what connections could you make? You know, Sheldon didn't look like he was feeling quite in control of the situation, right? So what connections could you make with him? All right. So I hope you guys were able to make at least one connection with Sheldon. And why don't you go ahead in the chat box, go ahead and type in maybe a word or a phrase of some of the connections or a connection that you made with Sheldon. And is there anybody, I could take one or two responses if anybody wants to talk. Love it, the emotional, social emotional, yes. Yes, Caroline, going back to the drawing board. Felt like a new teacher again for a little bit, absolutely. And just everything changing, absolutely. Great. So obviously, you guys, we're in definitely some uncharted territory. And one of the reasons that I wanted you guys to think about it is because we often are always worried about the kids, right? But this is all new for us too. And I really, in this process, want you guys to be kind to yourselves and know that it's a process. We're going to be great at some things, and some things it's going to be a learning curve, and it's okay. I don't want you guys stressing, and like I said, just be kind to ourselves, because I think sometimes that's hard for us teachers because we want to do right by our kids so badly. And the truth is, if we are okay, our kids are going to be okay. All right, I'm going to go back to the presentation. Thank you so much, you guys, for sharing. All right. I want to talk to you about my student population, because when closure first happened, you really have to know who your students are. And honestly, I I had my hands full this last year. I really had the whole spectrum. So I obviously worked with kids with mild to moderate disabilities, academic levels of all kind. I had kids who were on consult close to grade level to kids who were 2.5 below, years below grade level. So I really had to work with a lot. I had a higher caseload. I had 26, and for you special ed teachers, we usually cap out around 28, so I was close. And then I had to work with 6 different grade levels. So I did TK, K, and 2nd through 5th. And I had to work with 15 different teachers. So for you gen ed teachers, please be patient with us sometimes, the special ed teachers. Logistics is a huge part of our game. The other piece is that I worked with an independent charter that contracted their special education services from our district, which was a dual immersion that adds just another wonderful layer to servicing kids and finding resources. And I had students, from all types of socioeconomic status, right? Parents who were newcomers to this country, who were immigrants, to parents who were dropping off their kids in Mercedes, right? So I really saw the span, and the parent support as well. A lot of what we do, we need the parent support, and I never thought that there would be something as too much parent support, right? There are parents who are giving their kids the answers because they didn't want them to fail for whatever reason, and having to work through that. And then just the kids who were not able to get on because mom and dad are working, and they were so thankful that they had a job that, wherever they took their kids to daycare, they didn't have internet, so they weren't able to log on. So I really had the span and trying to figure out kind of almost every section of ways to support my students. Now, when the closure first happened, the first thing we got to do is we got to check in. I did home phone calls. Our district also wanted us to do a district questionnaire that actually ended up being really helpful. One of the things that I did check in, not only, first of all, the parents were super grateful for me, just me and my paraeducator calling in, because they were just as nervous as we were. The kids take their cues from parents and from us, and part of what we were doing was kind of calming the parents as well. And so when I called, though, it gave me the opportunity to find out what their technology was like, right? Did we need to get hotspots for them? Our school did a survey for the parents, but not all of them understood. So when they said, do you have internet? They would put yes, but they meant they were using their phone as a hotspot. And I don't know if you guys have worked with, the phone as a hotspot. It's super slow. It just was not conducive to a distance learning type environment. So we worked on getting them, depending on where they lived, there was some free Wi-Fi that they could log into, and we got them hotspots, which is another kind of issue, but it's something better than nothing. And the other thing was the kind of device they had. They would say, yes, they had a device, but my 4th grader would have a tablet. Now, around the 4th, 5th grade age, to have a tablet to do all your Google Classroom assignments is not going to work, right? So then I could step in and really make sure that they had the appropriate device. And then during this time, I made sure to use, to communicate, know which communication tool I was going to use with my parents. You always want to keep it simple, obviously go with what they know. And our school does Class Dojo. So that was one tool that I was going to go ahead and do. I know some teachers created Google Classrooms and did things like that. I didn't go that route. I instead became co-teachers on my gen ed teachers' Google Classroom, so I could give my students assignments specifically to them through their Google Classroom. But, really and truly the most important part was really getting that communication with the parents, because I was literally dojoing them like daily at first. Then it eventually got to weekly. So that was really important. And then, of course, the social emotional piece, right? I really realized that my older kids, we did like meditation, right? Just 5-minute quick meditation. Our kids were really scared at the beginning. And even though they know how much we care and all that stuff, we're not next to them. We're not near them. And so we got them to do some meditation, which really helped at the beginning. And then also for my littles, I was used to doing something called zones of regulation. I don't know if you guys are familiar with it, but that is not a very engaging program to do virtually. And so with my little guys, I actually found a program called Emotional ABCs, which was wonderful. I highly recommend it for the littles if you're doing anything with social emotional curriculum. And it's free for teachers. And it was engaging, it had videos, it gave our kids words to describe their emotions. So that was super, super important. And a big part of what we do in special ed is we have to make our kids feel comfortable and safe before they can obviously start to learn, right? Which, really quick, I'm going to plug this. My friend Wendy is doing the same, is doing another workshop next week around, I'm not sure if it's the same time or not, but she's talking all about community and making kids feel safe. And I highly encourage that you go to that too, because as a special education teacher, I cannot tell you the benefits of a kid who feels comfortable and safe in failing, because so many times our kids would rather fail not trying and may become a behavior than try and fail in front of their peers. So I highly suggest that one. And then another piece that I did that I feel is super important is I monitored if my kids at the beginning were attending their gen ed classes. You know, as much as we made the phone calls, a lot of times parents, you know, want to tell us what their hope or things are going to get done. And yes, I can, and my kid's going to get on. And I start noticing that they're not. It is honestly where I started to see who was going to be successful in this distance learning and who wasn't, right? I made sure to go ahead, it like gave me the red flags, like, well, why isn't Billy joining? Well, Billy's mom says he's turning in his stuff, but the teacher's telling me it's all wrong. So it really started making me, showing me the red flags with the students that I needed to kind of keep an eye on. And really, my role at the beginning was really that intermediary, where I was the kind of the middleman. Our gen ed teachers, I know you guys had anywhere from 22 to 35 students to worry about, and sometimes our students kind of fall through the cracks. And so I really kind of made it a point to make sure that I could be that middleman. Hey, so-and-so is not able to get the right device. Did they let you know? No, they didn't let me know, but I was able to catch it on my end. Or vice versa. Hey, so-and-so's having problems with Wi-Fi. They're getting on with me. Are they getting on with you? You know, being that person is really, really important, I think, in our role. And this last part, it's what I believe is the key to any successful co-teaching program is you've got to collaborate with our gen ed teachers. And gen ed teachers, if your special education teacher is not reaching out to you, reach out to them. Remember I told you about all those logistics that we have? Sometimes we might forget. We have so many things that we're trying to work out, but honestly, the gen ed and special ed piece has to be done together, and really in order to help our kids completely, right? We're a team, truly. And so, you know, making sure you're planning together, talking about these kids, gen ed teachers saying, hey, what do you think about this assignment? Can this student get it done? Not that gen ed teachers don't know their students, they do, they're amazing, but sometimes our kids are a little more comfortable with us because we work with them in small groups, right? We work with them at their level. And so sometimes they're willing to be a little more forthcoming with us, that we can kind of go and advocate for them and say, you know what, I think this is too much. And that is definitely one thing that happened with me. Then after we figured out the communication and kind of figured out how we were going to help these kids, I really needed to look at their services, right? My special ed teachers are very familiar, you know, 510 are push-in services. my district had decided to go ahead and do, where our paras would push in if they had it on their IEP, they would push in into the gen ed teachers session, and they would join them and sometimes others gen ed kids with them in the breakout sessions and would work with them that way. For the pull-out support, that was mainly done by me. And one of the areas that I looked at was the groupings. So the younger the kids got, honestly, the smaller my groups were getting. And I did have some one-on-ones. I tried not to. I don't want our kids to be dependent on us, but sometimes, and with attention spans, I'm sure you guys had, dealt with that. It can be a little more challenging when they're younger. All right, so I wanted to show you really quickly, go ahead and take a look of the sample schedule that I did. This is honestly one of many, many schedules that I did. They changed almost weekly. And I started adding things in as needs were arising. So my 4th and 5th grade teachers for math, they were assigning them weekly application problems. Those application problems tended to be really difficult for our kids. So I added, a section on Friday because that's when it was due, and Thursday for my 4th graders when that was due. Then I also, during this time, had 11 IEPs to go ahead and finish for the year. And so I had to add in time to make sure I was assessing students and just doing it to the best of our ability through distance learning. So take a minute. If you guys have any questions, let me know. Okay, I'm going to move on. Now, what I wanted to talk to you guys is, how did I deal with those kids who could not connect, right? I had actually 2 parents. One was a kinder and one was a 3rd grader. And as much as they tried, their child, a lot of times they were left with older siblings who were supposed to get them logged on, and it just wasn't working. And I really didn't want my kids to regress in any way, so I created individualized packets. So this is a sample of the letter that I sent him and his mom. And one thing that I made sure I did is that I didn't give this student anything new. This child knew these routines. This child knew, this is read naturally in Spanish. He knew these passages, and he knew the expectation. And I went ahead and even provided a template for writing a summary on the back after he wrote questions. And the parents would turn it in, and I would take a look at it and then provide another one. I also made sure to provide a schedule for him. So even though he was away from me, and even though he could not log on, I needed to make sure that he was reading, answering the questions, writing a summary. This is 1 per day, and that he was getting on to Zern for math at least every single day. So he wasn't able to connect with me, he wasn't able to connect with teacher, but at least I still gave him a routine that he could manage.
Jessica, can I jump in for a quick second here? We had a couple questions on the previous slide, and one of them was, one person, Holly, asked, was the pullout class like your own Zoom meeting with the kids? So is that how you organize that?
Good question. Yes. So my push-in, one of the great things, there's lots of pros and cons to charters, right? And I've been in district and I've been in charters. And with a charter, it's its own school, 600 kids. It's really easy to get things lined up. And so I had every single teacher's Zoom link, that reoccurring meeting. So my aide had everybody's schedule. We kind of had a master list. It also showed us, allowed us service providers, because we have speech, we had OT, we have all those extra service providers, to see this master schedule and make sure that we were able to schedule around them. So their classes were never being interrupted. And we were, like I said, pulling out. When I did pull out, yes, I had my own Zoom link, which admin and the other teachers also had. in case they needed to come in or say something or, whatever was necessary.
And that was one of the other questions that we got, which was, did you get the gen ed teacher schedule first? And it sounds like you had access to that, so you were able to make sure not to interfere with their time. Great.
And that was the key. That was what made it so much easier. Now, it's not possible for all schools to do this, to create a master schedule, because I've been in districts and sometimes it's really hard. Everybody's kind of shuffling. And so I just focused on the teachers that I worked with. But I always start with gen ed teacher schedule first and then would try to work around that.
Okay, and on your next slide, one of the questions were the packets that you created. Yes. Were those related to the students' IEP goals?
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for that question. 100%. Anything pull out was really to be geared towards their IEP goals. So, and this child, this is stuff that we were working on anyways with him, reading comprehension, fluency, all that good stuff.
Great. And this is a question that I'm going to put out there for us to think about. I don't think we want to answer it just yet, but I do hope at the end, this seems like something we'll get to at the end. Nancy asked, do you have tips for beginning the year virtually and establishing routines with which students are not familiar? So I think let's hold that question, because I think that's one people might want to mull over a little bit. You might want to mull it over. And I think it'll be a great way for us, now that we know what school is going to look like in different places, for us to sort of think about how to do that. And one person asked, how did parents get the packets and turn them in?
Ooh, good question. So at our charter school, our admin and the office staff was still working. So they were still, so I was able to I utilized screenshots like crazy because I had it all kind of in one PDF. I was able to screenshot stuff into a variety of the format that I wanted and send it over to our office manager and arrange a time for the parents to go ahead and show up and pick them up and turn them in. Okay, good questions. Now, I also remember, I told you guys I had both extremes, right? I had kids who, the gen ed curriculum, like they would show up, there was tons of enthusiasm, but honestly, it was just way too difficult for this one child. And honestly, this is the email that I sent her. This was an example of where mom was like, she's doing great. She's turning everything in. And then I go in and check in with the gen ed teacher and she's like, it's all wrong. I appreciate the effort, but it's all wrong. And so her and I decided to come up with a schedule, rigorous enough, so enough expectation, but also to keep her practicing her goals, because she was not a fluent reader at the time. She's a second grader, and she was still working on a lot of that, and all her goals. We were focusing on her IEP goals essentially through this, but I did expect her to still attend all of her gen ed classes, and she could do the assignments if she wanted. Like they did have some fun, like art and those extracurriculars that she wanted to do. She was always able to, but the minimum of what she had to create every single week was this schedule here at the bottom. Oh, another thing that I did do for my students, I just want for every single one, they were really kind of, especially at the beginning, lost. They were like, who do I go with? Miss Reyes? Do I go with Miss Gaitan, who was my para educator? Is it my teacher? Like they were a little lost, right? So, and parents too, as much as I had such great parent support, even they were getting confused. So I just went ahead and for every single student, I created a schedule for them. So it told them exactly what times, where they're supposed to go. And then for this student particularly, I said, here are her expectations for the week, right? So she had to do the AR quizzes, and all the libraries that I had offered them had audio, so there's no excuse not to be doing the reading, right? To complete at least one written summary, which when I would work with her in small group, this is one example. I would email it to the mom. The mom would have her do her summary, and she would take a picture of it and email it back to me, which I thought was really cool. And I was super thankful the mom was so on it. Give her a mini assessment every week, and then she'd also continue with dessert because this was all at her level. So these were some ideas of things that I had to do to problem solve for those kids who it was too difficult or just weren't connecting. I wanted to give them stuff that they knew how to do to continue that practice. It's really important for our kids, repetition, repetition, repetition. Now, when I was working with these kids, one thing that our kids just normally look forward to and really need are their accommodations, right? And so at the end of the year at this school, they wanted us to give a bunch of assessments. It was like, however that comes out, we're gonna, do our best and just give them their accommodations. So in order to make them feel like they were in a small group with me, I would let them all start with me. I'd separate them by grade level, have them come meet with me, and then I would walk them through and then say, okay, now you can go ahead and go take your test. And as I was tracking their progress, then you get to see some fun things. Remember I told you I had parents that helped too much? Well, I had a second grader all of a sudden get in Spanish, score at the 9th grade level on the STAR reading comprehension test. And the same thing happened with another one of my 4th graders. So all I did with those kids was, I called parents and I was like, hey, by any chance, did you read any questions to your child? Did they ask for support? And of course they ended up, yeah, oh, I thought I could help. It's all good intentions. And then I explained to them, no, you can't help. We just want to see what this is. It's okay if they don't, score as high as we'd like. We're just trying to get an idea of where they're at. And then for those 2 students, I scheduled a one-on-one, and I had that student leave his screen on. I put myself on mute, and then he actually shared his screen, and I just kind of sat there while he took his test to make sure that this, wasn't happening again, and parents were aware. So the other thing that I really had to problem solve was what do I do when my kids are not with me? And one of the things that my kids are used to using, I just have to remind them every once in a while, is I added some text-to-speech accommodations to their Chromebooks. Now, this is one of my favorite things because if you have extensions, these text-to-speech extensions, which is where the computer reads it to them, it'll read AR questions to them. If they're doing research, if they highlight what they're wanting to learn about, it'll read that to them. There's so many positive things, and it makes them independent. And the other piece for my older kids, as they got older, the writing, they were expected to do more writing. I had to remind them, you guys, you have on your Google Docs, you have your voice typing under tools, right? And so these were some of my things that really saved my students when they were away from me. Because remember, I don't know if you remember, in my schedule, I had office hours. That was also super helpful. But once I reminded them about their extensions, they started coming less and less because they were feeling more confident with doing things on their own. Now, with that being said, I actually want you guys to go ahead and explore these extensions. Let me tell you, you can go extension crazy and happy. There's a lot of things out there. I really want you guys to go check them out. And I'm going to give you, go ahead and keep yourself on mute. Go ahead, and if you want to leave your camera on or turn it off, up to you. But I'm going to go ahead and give you 3 minutes just to look at those extensions. And if you scroll down under related, you'll see there are plenty of extensions that you could use. These aren't the only ones. So I'm going to go ahead and check it out. One is read aloud, the other one is speak it. All right, guys, I saw that the read aloud didn't quite work right away, or it didn't work for some of you guys. It's not a big deal. I just wanted to see, I don't know if you saw the other one, anything in the Chrome web store, that is where you get all of your extensions. So highly suggest that at another time you look through it. There's highlighting ones that I've used before because it'll gather the students' history, like their websites, if they're doing reports. There's a lot of really cool stuff out there, but just beware, your URL bar will get real short because those extensions will get real long up there. Thank you, Vivian, for sharing. Really quick, I wanted to address two questions that I was given about my para. Was she able to work with kids in breakout rooms? Yes, she never had her own Zoom link. She either had to join the gen ed teacher's Zoom link and then the gen ed teacher, because we would plan, we knew that what she was going to do specifically with my students, and then sometimes the gen ed teacher would give her a job to do with a group of students, so she would do that. Or she would come to my Zoom link and she would work in the breakout. So definitely, we kind of just like teaching, right? They can never truly be alone with the students, and so we try to keep the same kind of process going with us. The other one was what was the best way for you to provide tech support to those families, especially ELs? Honestly, we had to figure out who exactly needed what. That is why, even though the school had sent a survey, I followed up and said, what are you using? Not just, do you have technology? What are you using? Because if it was the phone, I knew, no, we need to contact the school and see if there are any more hotspots available that the school could loan. And if not that, if Rancho Santiago College, so there's a community college in SAC, they had a list of a bunch of free websites that were giving, even just for short months. AT&T was giving free Wi-Fi for a few months. Charter, I think it was called, Comcast, those kinds of things. So we were able to give the families a list of things, but a lot of that was compiled already. I'm a big believer in not reinventing the wheel, and so I would actually direct them to our tech coordinator, so that was helpful. All right, I'm going to go ahead and move on. Now, another thing that I realized really quickly is that we need to have fun with our students during, distance learning. And for our kids where school is really hard for them, incentives are a must. It's a must when they're with us. And man, I realized how important it was when they were away from me, because at least when they were with me, I could give them a look and they knew they had to get to work, right? Let me tell you, that look did not work in this distance learning. They knew I had no power. And so I really had to focus on what were they willing to work for. And so I did something called a reinforcement inventory, which is just essentially asking these kids, what do you want to do? How do you want to have fun? How do I get you to work? And so I gave them, their minimum things. So they had to meet with their teachers, all attend all teacher classes, and then my Zoom links. And then I really wanted to continue to reinforce their reading. They had to take at least 2 AR quizzes on their own time and pass them. And then they would be invited to what I called our Fun Fridays. And that ended up being super successful. And what they chose really varied from grade to grade. Our Fun Fridays consisted of, with the littles, they loved the San Diego zoo cams. I don't know why, but they couldn't wait to see the tiger and the polar bears and all that cute stuff. And my older kids, they just wanted to talk. They missed each other. How's it going? Some just wanted to share things with me. So I can't stress enough the importance of having fun with your students. And to be honest, I realized how much I needed it too. It's why I love working with my kids. I always say, you work hard, then you can play hard, right? And so just getting them to understand that even though we're away, I still need you to do your part. And so that was really a big takeaway from this distance learning that I did with them. Obviously, I don't know about you guys, but we just got news that we're going to be teaching virtually, right? And so I'm kind of glad to know, at least finally now, because it gives me some time to start thinking about what my distance learning is going to really start looking like. I've kind of been through the learning curve, so I understand logistics and I understand the process of how to connect with my students. But really, I think this year we got to start thinking about the different types of teaching. You know, when we have with the littles 180 minutes of teaching to me, you know, some of it's going to be synchronous, some's going to be asynchronous, and then for us special ed teachers, we got to look at the data collection, right? How do we show that our kids are continuing to make progress? And so some of the things that I really want to do is for synchronous teaching, that is like our golden time with the kids. That is when we have to be most effective. And you gotta think of your time. In my personal opinion, I would try not to do more than 30 minutes in a session with our kids. Do 30 minutes maybe synchronous, and then maybe 30 minutes asynchronous, and then bring them back. And the younger they are, I would go less, 20 minutes, because we want this time to be truly effective. Now, one of the things that you guys might consider to help you be more focused is doing the flipped learning model. So that is essentially, I'll have a link for you guys later so you can look it up. But if you're not familiar with it, all the flipped learning model is where you essentially record yourself through Screencastify or any other kind of screencasting software. You record your lesson, you let your students see it when they're away from you. And the work that you essentially would normally send for homework to do, because you give the lecture and you send, you actually do that work with them through the direct instruction to see who's getting it, who's not getting it, and all that good stuff. So I really you should consider that model. It's gonna save you guys a lot of time. Your groups, again, I did really small groups, and to be honest, I think I'm going to stick with the idea of small groups, and my groupings will be more homogeneous too as well. I usually, when we are together, I love heterogeneous groups, but it's not as conducive when you're in distance learning. So I really think keeping your groups similar and as small as can be. And just looking at the resources, how to keep them engaged. Remember, because this time is so precious, when you do have them, you need them engaged. And so one of my favorite resources that I like to use is Pear Deck. It's the slides that come up, and I can get automatic. If I embed a question, they will answer it right away. So that kind of stuff is really important to see if they're getting it and they're not getting it. Go Formative, it's a website where you can create a class and you can give them an assessment, and on your teacher dashboard, you can see exactly how everybody's doing. Honestly, it keeps them accountable. I know we have some babies that are precious and who work so hard and are on it, but we also have the other ones that just need that extra, just reminding you, I can see you, I can see if you're working, you know, all that good stuff. And during asynchronous teaching, one of the things you might consider is doing rotations. Rotations when you're doing pull-out, so do time with me, go do stuff by yourself. When you're pushing in with your gen ed teachers, right? Gen ed teachers, this might be a great way to use the para, you know. Hey, since you're gonna push in, maybe you create a rotation, you're gonna be with me in small group, para small group, and then maybe an asynchronous, and you could do an hour and a half there in rotation. So please utilize these rotations. Just because we're not in the classroom, it's really how kids learn the best. You know, smaller the group, the better. And then Screencastify. I know I had mentioned Screencastify as a tool for you to record yourself, but remember I told you sometimes we get those kids who turn in all their work and they're just really quickly getting things done. And you're just like, I just don't think that, Jane is doing her best. So one thing you might do is have her screencastify herself doing the work. This is the YouTube generation, I swear. So they will like recording themselves. So, you want to present it as a positive. But at the end of the day, as soon as she's done with the screencastify, it goes to her drive. You make sure she shares that folder with you, and you have proof and see what is Jane really doing during, when I give her this worksheet that I asked her to do. Is she doing her fluency? Is she answering the questions the way I wanted her to? And some of my favorite resources to use for asynchronous, so when they're away from us, is Flipgrid is great. If you are not assessing writing standards, let them just tell you the answer. These kids, a lot of them have it. It's just that process from taking it, organizing it, remembering spelling and conventions, right? That's really hard for them. So I always want you to think when you are asking for information for our kids who are ELs, at risk, SPED, if there's an opportunity for them to just explain it because you want to know if they captured the concept or not, consider Flipgrid, consider Screencastify. Just let them talk and tell you. It lowers their affect, and honestly, you're gonna get a lot more from them versus a sentence, because the minute a lot of times our kids have to write, they kind of freeze, all right? Kaizena is it's an add-on actually through Google Docs. You have to add it on, but it's a way for if your students are doing a writing assignment, you can go in at a later time, check out their assignment, and leave them voice comments. Pablo, I'm really proud of you. You did a great job, but I need you to go back and check your capitalization and punctuation. And it records it. And so the next time Pablo goes and pulls up his doc to see if I have responded to him, he's going to hear my voice comments and he can go and make the adjustments. You can even add videos, like if this child was really struggling with conjunctions, you can find a YouTube video, upload that link, and then have him try to fix it that way. There's lots of things that you can do. There's so much stuff out there, you guys. Book Creator was another one that I used actually this summer that my student had a blast with. And one thing that I really want to try a little more of, I think, through distance learning this next year is choice boards. What I've really come to realize is that when our students have autonomy, when they get to choose, we're going to get more out of them. And so it's still my choices. I still get to decide those choices, but they're getting to have some of that autonomy. So for our SPED teachers, data collection doesn't go away, right? We need to make sure that you're not forgetting to make time in your schedule so that you can assess our kids, right? How are they doing? Are they progressing through their IEP goals? And if they're not, what's going on? And that's when we remember our assessment always directs our teaching, right? So we just want to make sure we're constantly doing that. So at least at minimum biweekly, and then just start creating what I call digital folders, right? For each kid, and put your stuff away. And if you are doing push in, or your para is, and you've done some co-planning, remember, don't reinvent the wheel. If so-and-so is working, their goal is about citing evidence from the text, and that the gen ed teacher is working on that skill, and they're doing it, in their classroom, ask them for that data and slide that into that folder, right? So it's just a matter of, we're going to have to be, responsible to speak to whether our kids are making progress or not, and explaining why. So you definitely want to keep that on the back burner. Now, any questions before I move on?
Jessica, there is a question in the chat.
Yeah.
The question was, how do you provide tech support for English learners?
Okay, so honestly, I do screencasts. I did screencasts for my students to do how to make sure their extensions were on. And really quick, I love extensions. I'm sure I've made that clear, but sometimes it's like technology. I love technology when it works. Sometimes they get kicked off. Right now, Google has this really interesting little, looks like a puzzle piece up there. It's actually now where it's hiding all of their their extensions. So they're little things that you kind of have to walk kids through. And that is what you're really going to want to do, honestly, at the beginning of the school year. Remind them. But the reason I love screencasts is because if a child forgets, I don't have to repeat myself. I send them the video and say, remember. And I have to tell you, the kids actually really appreciate it. And it's also teaching them life skills, which is to be resourceful. Go find the answer. YouTube it. Like, I'm constantly telling them that, because honestly, in real world, that's what we need to do, right? We have to go find answers. We don't know everything. We're learning with them. So, continue to encourage those things with those kids. Is there another question that I missed? Oh,
Sorry, I'm on mute. I saw one person asked, is there a Chrome extension that will highlight what they're reading for those that struggle with tracking?
No, that one's a little harder. I haven't found one with that yet. But with those kiddos, I was one-on-one, like I said, my readers. The libraries that I shared with them, so I use Story Online, didn't do it, but Mayan, which is connected to AR. Then there was Tumble Books. Gosh, there were so many. Oh, and Epic. Their read aloud did have trackers. So I was always, with those kids, make sure not only did I read those stories with them, I had them following along. So there was a variety of ways. If you don't through the extension, you can use, those other libraries. Anything else that you can think of? Oh gosh, so in terms of the resources, I know I've thrown a ton at you already. I actually compiled all of the resources that I have used at one point or another. But first, before I share that with you guys, I actually want you to take the time. Susan just put it in the chat box. It's for slide deck. I know I'm not the only one that had successes in this distance learning. And I actually would love for you guys to share something you did. So go ahead and click on it. Click on the slide deck there on the side. Melinda, I said Tumble Books, Epic, and Mayan. Mayan is the other one. For the Pear Deck. And go ahead and I'm going to show you on my end what it looks like as a teacher. So here's my Pear Deck. I see some students have. I'm going to start the class. And then I can show responses. And what I love about this is that it keeps it anonymous. A lot of our kids are afraid to let themselves, remember that whole fail? I'd rather fail not trying than fail trying in front of my peers. I love that. Seesaw, I love Seesaw. Signing books, yes. Love that you did Screencastify. Somebody had mentioned Nearpod earlier. That's another really good one. Anytime we can try to keep it all contained is really, really helpful. Google Classroom. Yeah, I know I didn't do a Google Classroom this last time, but I definitely think I'm going to create a Google Classroom for my students this next year. Super helpful. Yes, whiteboards. There's even digital whiteboards that you could do. Zoom also has a whiteboard. Well, they have an annotation type deal. Yes, thank God for YouTube. Quizzes, love it. Yes, Kahoot. Kahoot ended up being one of my not my favorite. I'm kind of over Kahoot, but my students are not. And I actually am, I think this next year, I'm gonna actually let them try to create their own. So, you know, all we can do is play. Our students often lead us to where they want us to go. Thank you guys for sharing. I want to thank you guys for attending, honestly. I appreciate you guys taking the time. I know, like I said, I'm not the only one finding success. I truly believe in communities like this, which is why I was so excited when Beth and Susan had told me about this, because, you know, even I want to learn from, you know, my colleagues. And so for today, I hope you were able to take home a few tools, a few strategies, that will help your students kind of be successful for this new distance learning. And I know that these are really difficult times right now, but I truly believe that, you know, we need to come together and be proactive so we can help our students, you know, and forums like this give us an ability to do that. So thank you so much for sharing. I had promised you guys I had compiled the resources. Beth is going to go ahead, Beth or Susan, sorry, I can't remember, is going to go ahead and put a link in the chat box.
Already there.
Already there, yay.
And I just want to catch up real quickly, Jessica, before we wrap up. I want to go back to that question that someone asked earlier. If there are ideas, and if maybe people want to take a moment and sort of pause and think a little bit about tips for beginning the year virtually and establishing routines, because, you know, in March, many routines had already been established, and so then we were moving that into a remote context. I wonder, I know that you mentioned you're already starting to think about the fall, and I know that many of you are beginning to think about fall and what that's going to look like. So do you have any thoughts for how people can begin to establish routines with which students aren't yet familiar? And what advice you might have? And I welcome other people to sort of put some things in the chat, and we can see what people have there.
I always think of the beginning of the year as a little torturous, only because those routines are the foundation of everything we do with them. It is where we set our expectations. And I say it's a little torturous because there's so much repetition, right? But from day one, you have to be very explicit with our kids, and not just once. Our kids with disabilities, they need repetition. I heard somewhere like the typical child needs to learn something, needs to hear it like 80 times. Like a kid with a disability, it's like 150 times, right? And so just constantly reminding, and then knowing the type of learners they are, right? We have a variety, making sure that they have it visually. Checklists are always huge for our kids. Google Classrooms, making maybe that you have, you know, one of your topics is resources, or just for routines, you know, really trying to set them, but then remind them to start to go get them independently. I see some questions. So some suggestions that I would do, especially at the beginning, is, like I said, do those reinforcement inventories. Let the kids know exactly what they're going to be, what you want from them. If you want them reading, doing a minimum of 2 AR quizzes a day, reinforce that. You know, what we do doesn't change in a lot of ways. It's just a matter of how we present it to them now. And save your voice. That's why I say do screencast when you do. These kids are used to being, you know, seeing themselves on YouTube, and I'm barely getting used to it, but honestly, the ability to go ahead and direct them to a video sometimes is way easier for me. So I always say it's a little extra work at the beginning, but it's totally worth it towards the end when you have a resource. And actually in my resources, I think I went ahead and added the screencast that I did for the extension. So if you guys want to use things like that, and that's the other thing, go find stuff. And there's so much stuff out there, you guys. It's just a matter of taking the time to sift through it. And I know I gave you a ton of stuff. Don't feel like you have to use it all. Use what you're comfortable with. you know, and that's kind of how I kind of lead, because I love our kiddos. I really do. I love what I do. But the hard part about them is not one thing works for all of them. And so we gotta adjust. So one program, one kid loved Powtoons, you know, where they got to create a presentation. Another kid was like, I like, what was the other, book creator. Can I just do it that way? And so you just kind of go with them. Your kids are gonna tell you. Now the harder ones, I will be completely honest, are your little kinders, TKers, oh, those precious babies. You know, I had a kid from, honestly, I honestly had a kid that, who told me he loved me every single day, a little TKer, right? And then the minute we got to distance learning, it was like, what are you doing on that screen? I'm not gonna leave my toys, I'm not gonna work with you. And so I really had to coax him to work with me, and everything was in a game. And his mom and I started by playing Kahoot together. He heard the sounds to Kahoot, and he loves animals, and so it was a Kahoot about animals. And that's kind of how I had to figure out how to get him to want to play. With the littles, it has to be a game, and I really suggest to keep it short, you know. Keep those increments short. Take a break, go do something else, go with your gen ed teacher, come back to me, that kind of deal. Okay.
One of the questions is whether you have an example of a reinforcement inventory. Well, that was one question. And then another person asked how to reinforce a student who likes tangibles.
Ooh. I would not, obviously, okay, the reinforcement inventory, just Google it. There's tons there. But honestly, I just ask them, you know, you guys, what should we do? If we were gonna work together for a party, what would you want to do? And that's kind of how I get the list going. The reinforcement inventories that you're gonna find online tend to be super detailed. They're going into foods, they're going into the tangibles, they're going into, you know, interests and topics, which are all really great when you have a kid in front of you, right? If you don't have the kids in front of you, you gotta kind of see what it is more visual. The kid who wants the tangibles, that is where you are going to make the mom or dad your best friend. And you're going to start to coach them on when to give those tangibles. So, you know, hey, is there any way? If there's, obviously, remember, I had both ends of the socioeconomic status. I had to be really creative. I tried to find topics that they were interested in, or and I would make my frequency of the amount of times I would give them stuff way shorter. So there was kids that I would wait till the end of the week and they could earn their prize, right? Fun Fridays. There were kids at the end of the session, they were going to get their prize. If we were learning about manatees because we were reading about manatees, you're going to get a video about manatees at the end, or, you know, just kind of really having to pivot and just be creative. Pinterest, you know, use all the things that are out there. Again, don't reinvent the wheel. We're all here for our kiddos, and so, you know, check out what's out there. But it really is thinking outside the box and talking to your friends. Let me tell you, first thing I'll do is I'll text my friends like, hey, what are you doing for so-and-so? And so really tap into those, you know, resources as well.
And I want to encourage people to go to the UCI Teacher Academy on Facebook. We're developing a Facebook community. And one way we'd like to continue this would be weekly to show some prompts, have some prompts out there, create spaces where you all can come together pretty informally and pretty quickly. I don't know, I try to stay away from Facebook, but this is the one thing I do like about Facebook, is it allows for these kinds of communities to come together. So if you join the UCI Teacher Academy, we're going to be inviting people, reminding people, we did this webinar, what are some things that, or webinar professional learning sessions, what are some things that you're trying as school is happening. From there, the Teacher Academy is looking to this fall to developing, we haven't figured out the structure yet, but to developing some small teacher communities where people have an opportunity to come together, share with each other, talk with each other, and use that as a space for hearing what different people are doing and problem solving together. We are in such an unusual time, so we hope that the Teacher Academy can serve as a support for those conversations to happen.
Awesome. Really quick, I wanted to address Erin and Holly. You guys had some great questions about kids who are refusing to show their face. I try to encourage it when you can. Obviously, call parents, to see. And if you're it's not a connection thing, then I would really highly suggest for you to use Pear Deck. A place where you can see if the kids are engaged, they're responding. Those kinds of platforms that, they might not be showing their face, but you can see if they're actively engaged or not on your end. That's the kind of way, because the truth is, I just did a summer enrichment program, and let me tell you, the minute they would take off mute, I would hear their reality, right? Which is a ton of people in there, a ton of people talking. And so it just made me remember and to have compassion, and that there are kids that are already self-aware of their home situation and are even deathly shy to share their faces. So, I appreciate there's some people who are like, no, you're going to show your face and I don't care. That we're not all the same. And so I love that you guys are trying to find other ways. So like I said, through those other forums might be a great way to do that. Any other questions? Did I miss anything else? Thank you guys so much for your patience. Like I said, I know I threw a lot at you guys. If you guys have anything to share with me that you don't see in the resources, you think I should add something, please email me. My email's pretty easy, jessica.reyes@sausd.us. I'm a resource for you guys, and I hope you guys will be a resource for me too.
And I want to thank everyone for taking time out on these beautiful summer days to really prioritize preparing for fall. This is such an unusual time, and I know that your students and families will be so grateful for the commitment that you're demonstrating to them. So thank you so much. Thank you for joining the UCI Teacher Academy. Please follow us on Facebook. We'll be sending out information to you all as we have more kinds of offerings for you. We're hoping to be able to put some sort of modified versions of these on our website so that people can go back to them. So I just want to thank you all for making time to be here today. And a big thank you to Jessica.
Thank you, Jessica.
Oh, you guys,
Yeah.
let's learn from each other.
Great. All right, everyone. Thank you. And we hope to see some of you at some of our future events. Have a great day.